every 10 minutes, a woman is killed by a person close to her. The stark statistic released by the United Nations, which noted a clear lack of progress when it comes to reducing the murder of women around the world, with the majority of those killings by partners or relatives. Home, it said, was the most dangerous place for a woman. On this, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence against Women, we're looking at issues across a broad spectrum, the daily abuse and harassment also when it comes to our world online. In extreme cases, it can also lead to murder there. To get more insight on it all, we can speak now to a sociologist at the Cardiff School of Art and Design, Ashley Morgan. Thanks so much for your time. Can I start simply by asking you, overall, as a society, it reads like we're getting actually worse when it comes to violence against women, but how do you see it?
I think it's far less about getting worse for women. It's just much more that there are more outlets that is recording it. I think violence against women has always existed. There's quite a lot of research that suggests that, but now there are considerably more outlets which say that women are, there's a lot of gender-based violence. And also, of course, social media has become yet another outlet for men to harass women. It's also highly problematic for men and their mental health that they are conducting these fairly violent forms against women.
Tell me more about that online element of it, because, you know, online, it's a weird space, isn't it? It's anonymous and yet not anonymous. Tell us more the impact that has on both sides in that equation.
Well, one of the really positive things about social media is that it's given many, many women a voice that perhaps they didn't have before. I don't think there's been a time at which we can, in the past, that we hear women's voices so loudly now, because social media has allowed women to speak, to have a platform, and to perhaps contradict some things that have been problematic, or just to have a presence. Problem with that is that, as you just said, it's also another area for men to be aggressors. And online trolling, as we know, is a massive problem. But one of the interesting things I think has happened in the UK recently is that some people have been charged with online trolling, and I think that sends out a really positive message to men. But I don't think that's going to stop men from being violent and expressing themselves in a very violent way. But on the other hand, women aren't going away. They will still be on social media and they will still have an active presence.
Yeah, I believe only less than 40% of countries have laws to tackle cyber harassment and cyber stalking, which of course is where things need to go. But until those laws come into place, one wonders, how can one best challenge the abuse online? What can women do to put their protection and blocks and stance in place?
I don't know. I think to some degree, I mean, it's problematic, I think, when in some of your article you had earlier about the woman, she said that the woman in Paris, she said that people started to recognize her and she was receiving threats that she would be found. I think that's a massive issue, but actually women should carry on speaking, because the more we talk, the more people get, particularly men who perhaps don't want to hear us, will get used to our voices. There are things that you can do. That you can block people, you can mute people. But fundamentally, if people want to find you or if people want to challenge you, they will do. But I think actually, considering that women make up half the population, we should have a voice and we should carry on speaking. And social media has allowed us that platform. But as some of the images that you're showing now, that's very problematic for women. But we should carry on speaking. We shouldn't go anywhere, and we certainly shouldn't make our voices quieter.
Indeed, as you say, we are the 51%. We're the majority. You know, there were so many matriarchal societies before. One wonders what happened to women to allow nearly men to have this power over us, and, you know, how can we take it back?
I don't think that women ever had any power because patriarchy doesn't allow it. When you have a system where all men are benefited, the majority of men benefit. They're not really going to relinquish power. And I don't think there was a lot of time where women had a great deal of equity. And let's not forget, in the UK, for example, all women have is the right to vote and the right to have power over their own finances. There's very little else that women have. So I always challenge the idea that feminism has gone too far, because there's very little that women have gained, really. It's just that we have a greater presence. I don't think we can take anything back, but we can carry on being a presence and reminding everybody that we do make up half the population and that what we have to say and do is important. But the other thing we need, of course, is men's support. We need men to support us and to stand up for women and say, yes, I absolutely agree that you are half the population and what you have to say is important. The problem with that is that that doesn't benefit most men.
Because that is something, even when we saw that Me Too movement and those massive protests, I mean, it was very rare to see men taking part and joining those protests, as if they didn't feel concerned, even though, you know, every man has a mother.
Yes, I mean, they are largely absent from protests to encourage and support women. The problem is patriarchal boundaries suppress men who do want to support women. But also, whenever people talk about women or women's issues or things like safety at night, the entire issue seems to be of women's making, not of men. And one of the things I try and do in my everyday life and in my feminist activism is try and get the discourse changed, change the discourse around women's safety and start talking about men's problematic behaviours. Because once you do that, you realise that men have to take control, because they are the ones who who are in charge and are causing the problems, but they're also causing problems for other men. So there are other men who want to step up and help and be allies to women and just to sort of talk about and offer support, but they're often shouted down as well.
The men, of course, in power at the moment, raising a lot of concerns. I mean, women's rights in the United States, for example, seem to be taking huge steps backwards.
Absolute retrenchment. I mean, when Roe versus Wade collapsed in 2022, the writing was very much on the wall then. And now it seems to be, because you've got federal and state law in America, states are now, some of the states in sort of like North Carolina they appear to be absolutely out of control, and that anything they can do to suppress women is they're going to try and do, and they're going to enact that through law. Also, there are lots of extremely Christian right people in America. There is talk of them funding groups in the UK, particularly anti-abortion groups, and I think as a country we need to reject that outright. There are a few more laws in this country, like the law that about distance and abortion clinics. You can't agitate outside an abortion clinic. It's got to be something like 150 meters away. In America, all those rights have gone now. But also the problem with America is individual states will start making an example of women and showing what they can do against women. And that's the thing I find the most problematic, is how far can they push laws which suppress women's rights? And it seems terribly competitive to me as well. How far can we push it? And we'll push it as far as we can.
Ashley Morgan, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there, but it was lovely to speak to you. Thanks so much for joining us here on France 24.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.